Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
There's a shot. To right. It could be. Right field. Grand slam. What a shot. That's how you get hot, young fella.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports Network.
They can follow their dreams.
Because the fight isn't over yet.
You will see me choose to protect my community by wearing a face cover.
And even with my face covered,
you will see me.
As a son.
As a man with a never quit attitude.
as a fighter for change.
Join me in wearing a face cover
to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because this is one small act of kindness
that has the power to make a big difference.
My God.
It's another sad day in America.
Painful to be introduced to George Floyd during his last breath with the cop's knee on his neck.
On his neck.
He deserves so much more.
How many black lives have to be taken before something is done?
We are not a threat.
I am shaking as I type.
This has got to stop.
We are sick of it.
I just want us all to live.
Death will not stop until the powers that be are finally held accountable.
Don't look away from the truth until every one of us are free from white supremacy.
The world stands with you.
Criminalizing and killing of black and brown bodies is not new. It's as old as America. It's just getting filmed more.
Do you know what it feels like to be hunted? To have a new hashtag for a dead black person every single day? How does one plan a life if they aren't sure they will have a life to plan?
Teresa Armstrong, Deborah Daniels,
Megan
Michelle Lee
George Floyd. His name was George Floyd. Say his name.
Say his name.
George Floyd. Say his name.
Say their names. Once again, and always, we fight for justice.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Rest in power, beautiful. You didn't deserve this.
It's like a loot machine.
All around town, trying to get down.
YT Productions.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavill, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball, So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, you gon' learn today how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay. Just tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Cavill.
Yes, this is still Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. But I have some guests in the building as Charles and Mike are both out on assignment. So we have none other than Brian Fulford of Brian and AD Sports Rap. We have Joe Clay back in the house as well with 1876 Sports and Culture. So we're going to bring it to you hard and heavy. You know, this is our football matchup day, but we might sneak in a little bit of the other sports in terms of baseball and give you some updates as we get it done. Welcome to episode 127 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that is covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports from institutions large and small, from NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. And as I said, Mike and Charles are out on assignment, so we have Brian and Joe Clay in. Jay Gleasy. We are filming from our home studios and send a signal live to our KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that, Joe Clay, how you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, man. I can't complain. I'm excited about this high-powered Saturday of SWAC football we have coming up.
Brian, how you doing?
Doc, it's a pleasure to be here. Too blessed to be stressed.
Oh, man, I love this. This is going to be fun, man. I got folks that just know what to do. I'm going to come straight to you, Joe. And I'm going to go to you, Brian. I'm going to give you a little bit of love today with the sports rap, BCS and team, just kicking head hard and heavy. What are some of the hot news out there that you want to talk about? What's on your mind, Brian?
Doc, I'm still buzzing about Eddie George being the 22nd head coach at Tennessee State. University that's got it's near and dear to my heart. You know, my sister is a graduate of TSU. So, you know, I got a lot of love for the Tigers. And I find it really interesting seeing some of the commentary really from folks in the Nashville area. I listen to quite a variety of different shows, and hearing Eddie George and Tennessee State talked about on a national sports talk show for really about almost 5 minutes just validates the reasoning behind the move. And admittedly, I called it a big time shot in the dark. You know, it's like, hey, we're swinging for the fences. I think we can all kind of gather that from the press conference and everything from Dr. Allen, the athletic director, and from the president of the university. And they just swung away and hit a home run, it sounds like. And I think the one thing that's impressive to me, when I hear people from the Nashville area, and this is what you always got to do in situations like this, you got to listen to the people who are in that area. I think a lot of times from a national perspective, we can have our thoughts and opinions, but if you really want to get a feel for something, listen to the people who are in that community. So obviously the folks at TSU and their the head folks there, they're going to have a certain opinion, but listening to other people who have covered and talked to Eddie George, who know him personally, know his businesses, know what type of person and man he is. And then they also know about that scene. They know about Tennessee State just a little bit, but they're aware of what's going on in Nashville. This to those individuals, this screams of, hey, it's a big opportunity for Tennessee State to be on a national scale in a big city, Nashville. Many people consider Nashville a big city. It is, so I may not have thought that 20, 30 years ago, but it is. And so this is an opportunity for Tennessee State to be out in front in that city. And kind of like my show partner, Drew, said, this is a chance for them to kind of jump ahead of Vanderbilt, who really is probably the bottom dweller of the SEC. And people in the Tennessee area, Eddie George is going to open doors that Tennessee State by itself and with all of its great traditions and everything else may not have been able to get open. And Rod Reed was a great man by all accounts. I mean, he was a TSU alum, but hearing them talk about what Eddie George is going to bring makes this a good hire. Now, it remains to be seen whether the other stuff works, the football side of it, but in terms of finances.
he said just a little thing there called the football side. We'll see how that goes. But I think you made great points, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays up. I do think it's hilarious when you talk about the people east of the Mississippi and they say TSU, they're talking about Tennessee State. West of the Mississippi, you say TSU, you're talking about Texas Southern. So I think that's always intriguing. So let me go to you, Joe. What are your thoughts in terms of the hire of Eddie George? I know yours may be a little different than what you heard Brian, but share it to the world. What are your thoughts?
Just a little different. I thought they swung, and I thought they hit a foul ball. That was my original assessment until I saw that he hired also Hugh Jackson. To me, Hugh Jackson should have been a head coach. But take a step before that. If I'm looking for a head coach, I would have went down to Alcorn and I would have snagged Mr. McNair down there. First, that's what I would have done. And we know he was trying to look for another home previously anyway. But with that said, I think Eddie George is going to have a struggle with the X's and O's. I was thinking strictly from an X's and O's on-field perspective. He's going to struggle with the X's and O's. He's been removed from football for how many years? After he retired, he went to MBA school. He went to acting. You mentioned he has various business ventures. So he's been very successful off the field. His focus has not been on football, on the X's and O's. I know he did some sports football analysis for a while. So he spoke about football, but it's a whole different ball game when you're the CEO of a whole football team and making on-field, in-game decisions. So the hire of Hugh Jackson was big time. That tells me that automatically they're going to have a good offense. Say what you will about Hugh Jackson's record in the NFL. He knows offense, period. That's going to help him recruit quarterbacks. That's going to help him recruit offensive talent from day one, I think. When you talk about the other hire, though, on the defensive side of the ball, Mr. 500, I know that's his mentor, his head coach, but I wasn't real excited about the hiring of Jeff Fisher, and I think he
said Mr. 500.
Mr. 500, that's what he's known as in the NFL circles, who probably should have exited the league 10 years before he actually was forced out. Let's be honest. So I think on game day situations for the first probably couple years, Eddie George is going to lean heavily on his assistant coaches, his OC and his DC. And word on the street I got from TSU alum was that there was a lot of folks not happy with this being someone outside of that TSU family. I think it's been y'all have only had a couple head coaches who were outside of that TSU family. So a lot of folks weren't happy, but as you mentioned, there were quite a few folks who were excited about what doors Eddie George will help the university get into. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I think it's going to be rough with his own game decisions, but without a doubt, their recruiting is going to jump up. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Can you, Joe, just think about this though. If you're going to upset TSU alums, who better than to go get somebody who gave so much to Nashville through the pro team? I mean, it's like, hey, I'm going to be upset. Oh, man, but it is Eddie George. All right. I'm going to be upset, but it is Eddie George. And, so we going to give him a chance. It may be a little bit longer leash than you might give some other outsider because it is Eddie George. And so if he comes in, and what I like the fact is Eddie George is not afraid to say what he doesn't know. And I've read that in a couple of different places. He admits what he doesn't know, and he admits that, and he seems to be the kind of person that is willing to go out and learn it, reacclimate himself to certain things, and then surround himself with good people who are going to help him along the way.
He to your point, he's going to need to do that, and we've seen that happen before. In fact, legendary coach Texas Southern University, at Tennessee State. He used to be there. A lot of people used to talk about that program when they had the great offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. Big John Merritt didn't necessarily coach X's and O's. He managed, knew how to fire up different players and things of that nature, and obviously with success. But I'm not sure in this day and age, it'll be fascinating to see is that something will work? And this is what I say about all these types of head coaching hires. This is what I like about coming out of the academic side. It's a case study. This is a case study. I mean, we can come up all day long and go back and forth why it's great and should work, why it's bad and won't work, what parts may work, whatever. But at some point, this is so different and new in a lot of ways. And it's even different than the Deion Sanders because of one is more of a national brand, one of the highest brands out there ever been out there in terms of football and total basketball, maybe other than Michael Jordan. And then you have somebody that's a very likable guy, regional, very high quality, high standard guy, but different levels, Heisman Trophy winner all together, but still different frameworks of the branding in itself. So case study. It'll be fascinating to look at that. With that said, let me jump in here as we get ready for it. Let me give a shout out to some of the folks that have jumped in here. As always, Reggie House, CIAA in the house, Chuck Hunt, Edgar Birch, Alex Dora, Franklin Nelson in here. I saw him for lunch today, getting it on there, celebrating with the Texas Southern University men's basketball program, celebrating their SWAC tournament championship win and NCAA opening round game. Alan Malone talking about Alabama A&M is in the house. I see you. Arby Parker, Alan Malone, as we said, Anthony Johnson. Kay Johnson is always in the house. Good evening inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Ventress Johnson joining us. Karen Griffith, Ricky Burton, just to name a few. Chad Cooper, Ricky Burton, as I said. Let's see who else is in here. Wendy Jenkins Bishop is checking us out, making sure we're doing it right. Lonnie Shaw on board. North Carolina A&T, those Aggies still showing up. I like it. Fred Whittick, Heritage Family Fellowship Workshop Center, HBCU Heritage Family Fellowship Workshop Center. Make sure I get it all out there correctly. Jamie Walker, Belinda Johnson, Jerome Jeep Sutton, Rattlemania. Oh, yeah, Hillman Frazier. Appreciate y'all showing up and showing out, giving us the love in the lab. As we get up to it, let's just jump in here in some ways before we maybe start to get into some other news and notes of the day. One of the things I was looking at, talk a little bit about baseball before we get into some of this. Obviously, the Black College Nines jumped up with their latest poll rankings. Let me just go over the top 5 and see if you got any thoughts in terms of what that looks like. You have FAMU at the time. They had went 5-0, big time run, RPI of 212, just 10-16 on the season, but playing really solid in the Southern Division of the MEAC. They are in number 5. Number 4 is Southern out of the SWAC, 10-14, 4-2 previous week, previous rank 8, so they jumped up 4 spots during this poll ranking. Up to number 3 is Alabama State out there in that East Division. They were 5-3. This is before they got swept by Jackson State this past weekend, 11-13. So you think they would drop down. And then number 2, North Carolina Central to MEAC. Really interesting to see what North Carolina Central is able to get done. As we know now, they'll be closing up baseball shop, which is a tough one. 10-8 at the time on the season. Number 1 is Jackson State University of SWAC, 7-2, undefeated in the East Division of the SWAC. As we just said, they swept Alabama State, not only for the series in Jackson, but now in terms of the season. They beat them earlier to open up things in SWAC play down in Montgomery, and they got it again. 6-0 against Alabama State. That doesn't happen much between those two teams. They fight with each other, but they're getting it done. And now Jackson State at this point is undefeated. When's the last time that has happened, if you say that? I think, Brian, you brought that up a little bit. 18-7. Any thoughts in terms of the baseball rankings, in terms of top 5 teams going on here? I'm going to stick with you, Brian, because you brought up some of these conversations. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, as I'm looking at the poll, of course, it's good to see Florida A&M right there sitting at 5. But, I think it's interesting. Must be a lot of SWAC people on this poll and these voters because, if I just go off RPI, and I will admit I am a proud voter in this Black College Nines poll, and every time I look at the polls, not only do I look at the records, but I try to go to the metrics and the analytics and see what the RPI and there's a couple other mathematical data points that you can look at as they rank teams. And so it warms my heart to see Florida A&M actually probably sitting at number 2 based on just RPI behind Jackson State. So 2 future SWAC teams. The SWAC is dominant in the top 5, and we look forward to seeing FAMU close out the MEAC with a win and a championship, and then we get ready to come over to the SWAC and do some damage over there with y'all.
I don't know if you want none of the swag over here. Now you're in the East Division. That East Division is tough. The West is the beast, but it looks like what's coming into the East, it may get stronger. I don't know if it's going to be balanced or does the power tilt to the East. So I'm going to stick with you and follow up in terms of that, because I think your thoughts in regards to the RPI versus a conference that you certainly can say is deeper in terms of talent. I always think it's fascinating when you talk about that, the RPI challenge of what does that look like in terms of the eye test, in terms of you seeing teams play. How do you weigh that? Why is the RPI more significant for you right now?
I think when you can't do head to head, and especially this particular year, when you can't, when you don't have head to head, when you don't have cross conference, you have limited travel because of COVID concerns at a lot of schools. I think this is a great year to go to your mathematical formulations and try to compare teams. Obviously, sure, you'd like to see everybody play it out on the field. And, one of the things that I find interesting is the whole theory that if you don't play, you don't really move down. Well, I'm sorry, if you didn't play, whether it's your fault or not, you didn't play. Teams should have moved ahead of you, at least in my thought. And being a voter, I would have moved some people ahead of teams that didn't play. Not saying anything bad, but it's just, look, it's a week-to-week poll at this point. At some point at the end, it's going to even itself out. So I just think the analytics allow for some sort of normalcy because everybody is judged against the same set of criteria.
Yeah, I like your points. I am one of those. To me, you got to play. Now, sometimes, depending on what teams did directly behind you, if they all lost, then you may have some teams jump up to where they are, but they might not jump up past the team that was on a win streak, So you still do have some variables, but generally speaking, I do hit a team if a team is not playing that week, whether it was their fault or in the past when they just had an open week. So let me go to you, Joe, in regards to first your thoughts on that RPI playing each other, MEAC Southern Division maybe against the SWAC East West divisions. We don't think as much about the MEAC Northern Division teams. They don't get the kind of credit as you think about teams in the Southern region, whether it's Southeast or Southwest playing. So there's some unfair framing on that, even though they get to play more teams that are within their bellwether, if you would, in terms of similar type teams, regional matchups that work. While oftentimes in the South, you have the more of the Power 5 teams and they're playing each other. So you have teams that might get beat up a little more, so their records are not as tantamount to that. How do you weigh all that in when you look at voting on a poll ranking system?
I think it's a big guessing game, particularly when you have these division splits where one entire division, they only play one side of the division. I think it's a guessing game, and I feel the same way about football. It's all a guessing game. I know we know the purpose of these polls. You have to do it, but I think specifically during this year of COVID, and all these games are being missed. I personally don't feel good about placing a team that's missed significant games or a couple games higher than a team that's played a bulk of its schedule. That to me, it's like getting fired on your day off. I just don't like it. It doesn't make sense to me. But hey, I think one thing that I'm interested to see is how is the addition of Bethune-Cookman and FAMU to the SWAC going to affect baseball recruiting? We know it's going to have a positive effect on the football recruiting, but how is it going to affect a sport like baseball? I know just if you look at the rosters of different baseball teams throughout the SWAC, they're getting those kids from all over the country, all over. So I'm wondering how it will affect. Will it help pick up recruiting? from a baseball perspective, have we seen any curves or upticks in baseball recruiting at all? Has it been long enough? Have we gone through a baseball recruiting cycle? Can you speak on that?
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, talking to the coaches, they feel like they're getting better recruiting in terms of what's going on, deeper in terms of the recruiting framework. I don't think they've been able to dip into Florida. I think you won't see that and still this offseason and next year. Some of that is COVID-19, not being able to recruit, to really get out there. You're still doing these online type of recruitings. So you're going to tend to go to where you're more comfortable with relationships you have versus exploring outside of that and developing new relationships. So I think that's still to come. Once you see some of these matchups between what will become the East Division, it's my understanding Alcorn will shift over there in baseball as well. So now you're going to have the Florida component, the Mississippi schools in Alabama. So it's going to be interesting. You see a lot more of the teams out of the East Division recruiting in Atlanta. They'll come in, maybe pull a couple of kids from Texas, whether it's Houston or Dallas, but obviously the teams in the West, they tend to really recruit Louisiana and recruit in Texas. And then they'll cherry pick some kids maybe out of California. Omar is always big in regards to what he does in Jackson. Somehow he has a pipeline not only into Florida where he'll get some kids, but he'll go into the Caribbean to some degree, which is interesting. Obviously, you've seen that with Bethune-Cookman in Alabama State. As a coach there was part of Melendez when he came over. Bethune-Cookman and obviously succeeded him once Melendez left. So you also see them getting some kids out of Puerto Rico in Florida, second and third generation Puerto Ricans that born in Florida, but obviously are from Puerto Rico. And then they even get into some of the other Caribbean countries, if you would, which are always fascinating. Caraco, that obviously always has a good Little League team, is one of the teams that you'll see quietly, see some players at Jackson State and potentially some other places, is always fascinating to me. So I think you're going to see even more in that and more intentional. You'll see more teams being comfortable getting into Florida. So I think that's fascinating when you get into that. As we start to make the change before we get heavy into football, I wanted, since we're talking about these poll rankings, I want to get your thoughts. Charles and Alan gave me their thoughts on the poll week on Tuesday, but you all didn't get a chance. So I'm gonna give you all the love and see what you thoughts are on the poll ranking in terms of football. Dr. Cavill's 2020 Spring 2021 HBCU Major Division Football Poll Rankings, Week 7. Just to give you some indication, since y'all asked about this, the poll rankings here are algorithm framework, deals with RPI, head-to-head matchups. It talks about strength of schedules. It's all weighted in there, but a big component is head-to-head matchups in terms of what takes place, which is a little difficult in terms of COVID-19, but it is what it is. They got teams playing, so we're going to rank them. We chopped down from a 10 to top 5 to make it a little more interesting. So teams receiving votes this week: Alabama State Hornets 3-2, 3-1. They had a tough loss to the in-state rival Delaware, for those they want to call it that. In terms of Delaware State, that gets 56 points. They are 2-2. In terms of what they've done in the season, Alabama State Hornets are 3-2 and 3-1, just getting 42 points and receiving votes. Dropping out a couple of weeks ago, Jackson State Tigers 4-3, 3-2, still outside of the top 5 at 70 points. No team dropped out of this week, so you have the top 5 teams pretty much similar order, but there were some changes. So let's see what you think. Number 5, South Carolina State Bulldogs 2-1, 74 points. Prairie View A&M 2-0, hadn't played in a couple of weeks, still holding on to one first place vote, 82 points. Remain at number 4. At number 3, Southern Jaguars 4-1, 3-1, 3 first place votes. They actually dropped for not playing this week at 96 points. Brian. Number 2, Alabama A&M 3-0, 2-0. They played primetime ESPN and literally played Coach Prime. 3 first place votes, 97 points, moving up a spot. So they jumped over Southern. At number 1 is Arkansas Pine Bluff. Did not play this week. They were off. That was already scheduled in there at 3-0 in terms of overall, and 3-0 in conference play with 5 first place votes, 110 points. I'm going to stay with you, Joe Clay, as you were shaking your head, and I'll go to Brian. see what he likes about my poll ranking in terms of not playing this week. I listened to him. See, we do this here. Joe Clay, what are your thoughts in terms of the top 5 teams? Any concerns?
I'm feeling it. I like Pine Bluff. I like you giving love to Pine Bluff. They've shown that this season they deserve the respect. They've earned the respect. So I like that. They've got a top-notch quarterback who can win games on any given day. So I'm good with that. Alabama A&M, hey, they got the best quarterback in the SWAC. How can you argue with that? Of course, the defense suffers a lot, but they can put up points against anybody. It's getting a little dicey at number 3. SU. I know they find a way to win games. We understand that. But their offense is atrocious. They grind it. But I think once they face a team that has a truly tough, one of these tough quarterbacks that we have in the SWAC, they're going to be in trouble. So I'm waiting to see them. Well, we may not get a chance to see them play one of these top-notch quarterbacks. Prairie View, of course, we haven't seen him play. That's my alma mater. We haven't seen him play, I feel like, in a very long time. The last time we saw them, the defense stepped up big time. We were still kind of going in between 2 quarterbacks. So I can't argue with them being at number 4. I can't sit here in good faith and say that they belong higher. They've got to show us. Well, we'll find out this Saturday, actually, when they go to Pine Bluff and face that big-time quarterback. South Carolina State, I hadn't seen them play. So I can't speak on South Carolina State, but we certainly know they belong ahead of JSU. They belong ahead of Prime for certain. So it was a good thing that you dropped them out of the top 5. That's a good thing. And so I would say South Carolina State and Alabama State. Alabama State looks very good to me. I have seen them play. They look good. They've got a very nice quarterback, as you well know. So I'd be interested to see what they would look like in a head-to-head. But your list is decent, Dr. Cavill.
I appreciate that. I'll take that from Joe Cleasy. With that said, Jackson State had rose all the way to number 1. But 3 consecutive losses would find you outside of just about any poll, and it happened here. I mean, it took a little while. They fell out, but it is what it is. Going to Brian, what are your thoughts on the top 5, Dr. Cavill's poll rankings, inside the HBCU Huddle Report? What you got?
So, Doc, was the one first place vote for Prairie View A&M, did that come from Joe or was that Mike Washington? You don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me. I can guess. I can guess if I wanted to guess.
Hey, Mike don't pull any punches. It wasn't Mike for sure.
Okay. But no, I like Arkansas Pine Bluff sitting at 1. I think they have the 2 best road wins, if I'm not mistaken, right? They went to Southern, and now wait a minute. Did they beat Grambling State at home or away? I thought it was away.
At home.
They were away. They went on the road.
I mean, they were at Grambling.
Yeah, so I think those are the 2 best road wins. And
no doubt about it.
Their one home game, I think, got cut short, if I'm not mistaken.
Alabama State, after Alabama State had that big victory over Jackson State.
Right.
Alabama State was getting them in that game, but it was still a lot of time left.
Well, I thought Arkansas Pine Bluff was up 10-3 when it got called. Weren't they up?
No, Alabama State was up. Alabama State was playing well, which it was fascinating to see because they were really dominating the Golden Lions. Like I said, it was still some like 8 minutes left in the second quarter, so you had a whole half. And as much as Alabama State had dominated the game, it was only, like you said, 10-7 or something like that. It was still a touchdown less than that, even though they had dominated much of that game, to their credit.
Well, hey, thank God for weather. I'm sure that's what they're saying in the Bluff.
I'm sure.
They were like, let's go home.
Because that game's not going to be made
Southern on the Bluff. They're like, what? Come on, weather. What's the problem?
Yeah, exactly. But I think Arkansas Pine Bluff deservedly sitting at 1, and I think what might obviously this week will be interesting because with the 1 and 2 may very well stay the same. If A&M wins and Arkansas Pine Bluff wins, those are going to be tough matchups. But Southern is a team that I think it's funny. I hear you, Joe, when you talk about Southern's offense, because I sort of feel the same. Maybe not as passionately about their offense as you do, but I just wonder. I keep looking at their quarterback position, and I applaud Coach Odom for just saying, "Look, I really don't think we have one solid guy, so we're just going to use two to the best of our ability," and that's what he showed in his coaching acumen against Jackson State. When opportunity presented itself to have Skelton out there, bam, Skelton ran all over Jackson State. But the minute they got a chance to throw with late in the first half, oh, hey, let's bring in the other kid, Lampley, I think is his name.
Yep. Yes.
Tosses a touchdown or something like that. And so, look, I applaud him for doing it, but he's playing to their strength, which is right now, we're just going to run the ball all day. I'm still amazed that 42 minutes of they needed that week off. It's a good thing Southern had a week off, because being on the field and just running somebody to death for 42 minutes in a game, that had to be tiring. So it was probably the best bye week that Southern has ever had for those offensive linemen to say, we love run blocking, but woo, coach, we needed a week off. Thank God. So I like the poll. I like the poll.
Appreciate it. This is Dr. Ville with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, sitting in for the crew that are out on assignment. Mike and Charles are Brian Fullfoot of Brian and AD Sports Rap, as well as Joe Clay of 1876 Sports and Culture Podcast. With that, stick with us. We'll be right back. And I see Greg Suggs jumping in here. You want to make sure y'all understand. South Carolina State did defeat Alabama State 14-7. He wants it on the record to make sure you know that in regards to his Bulldogs being top 5. Big time victory. We're going to come back and talk about some of these matchups. It's wild that a lot of people obviously are talking about that Alabama A&M and Alabama State in the Mag City Classic in the East Division matchup, rightfully so. But I guess with Pine Bluff being off, certainly Prairie View being off, it seems like forever, you got a top 5 matchup that nobody's really mentioning. So it'll be fascinating to see what your thoughts and as we get into it. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Second half, we'll go inside the football in a big way and break down some of these matchups this weekend. This is Dr. Ville inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Stick with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
This is Dr. Ville with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. They're out on assignment, so we have Brian Fullfoot, Brian and AD of the Sports Rap, Joe Clay of 1876 Sports and Culture, bringing it to you live and heavy as they do it like none other. Check out their shows. Great shows that they got going on. One podcast style, the other one, Brian, in terms of streaming. Don't be surprised if you see 1876 Sports and Culture start moving to a streaming platform. We're warming up here, so you're getting to see how they get it done. We've had Al, Joe Clay join us, part of that team, and you'll get to know more people on that team. But go check out the podcast. Go check out Brian and AD as they do it like no other in terms of the sports rap. Before we get into these matchups, we'll start with the MEAC, South Carolina State, DSU, top 5 match up with South Carolina State in terms of that. But Lonnie Shaw wanted to know, Jalen Jones entered the transfer portal. Where is he headed to? What do you think? Will Quincy Casey follow him being a freshman, knowing that Sanders is already designated to start in the fall. I'm not sure that Sanders is starting in the fall. I think a lot of people believe that because of his son, but I think it's going to be open play. And if Quincy does what he did in terms of Saturday, he'll get his chance out there. I think people get a little mindset with Sanders thinking that he's all about himself. But if you know anything about Sanders, watch him over the years, Sanders wants to win. And he's going to do whatever is best for his program to win in terms of that. And anybody that likes the limelight, prime time, whatever, he can't stand to lose and doesn't believe that he's supposed to lose. So don't get it twisted. I just think we got to be careful about allowing our personal feelings to get in terms of what we think a coach will do. Any of you all want to shoot at that? Give thoughts on that in terms of Lonnie comment?
Go ahead, Joe.
I agree. I think that young man showed himself very well in that last JSU game. And the first thing I said was, Shedeur may have a challenge on his hands come this summer and fall. I don't think it's going to be his job necessarily. I think Casey is going to, he showed himself very well, and he's going to, I believe and imagine, work extremely hard over the summer to hold on to that job. So that
I agree with you. And I would say one of the reasons Jalen Jones is transferring is now he seems to see that he's falling second or third in terms of the depth chart. And he knows what's coming in terms of him getting his first shot. When you got a freshman coming in doing that, he knows the writing is on the wall. Any thoughts from you, Brian, on it?
I think that he knows the writing is on the wall that Shedeur Sanders is starting in the fall. That's why he's leaving. I didn't want to believe it, because I kept telling a buddy of mine who happens to be in your Houston area there, Doc. He kept telling me, he said, B, Shedeur is going to be the starter. I said, no, man, Jalen Jones, man, he's a 4-star. I've seen Jalen Jones. He will win that job. He's been there. He's but after seeing look, I don't care what you say. After seeing that prime, I hate to say this, you don't take a guy out like Jalen Jones when, as bad as those 2 losses were, that offensive line was garbage. That offensive line was getting blown up. What could Jalen Jones do back there? He wasn't very effective, but he also didn't have a great offensive line. The same offensive line that they were bragging about when they were running over poor little Edward Waters, that line disappeared 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. And Jalen Jones paid the cost for it. And so you in the biggest game of the year, the game for the championship, you benched Jalen Jones. You didn't even bring Jalen Jones out in the second half. That's when Jalen Jones should have been on the phone right there in that third quarter, looking up in the stands saying, transfer portal, because there was no reason to not bring Jalen Jones in the second half of that ball game if you wanted to win that game. I'm going to say it. I said it. I don't think they just all evaluation.
I don't think it was the quarterback was the player the difference in that game, but we have the coach of Jackson State University, Omar Johnson. He was able to join us. Let's bring him in, and we'll save this for a little talk after we finish with this interview. Coach Johnson, are you ready to go?
Yes.
How's it going, Coach?
Going pretty good.
Thank you for joining us on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's talk about your program. Playing some really good baseball right now, I believe. Certainly, at least from the record, you're undefeated in terms of the conference play on the Eastern Division. We haven't seen that much in this league. It's really tough. So be able to do that, particularly under these circumstances, COVID-19 protocol. Talk a little bit about your team.
Well, we got a good mix of young and older guys. We returned most of our guys in the outfield, but we had some guys decide not to return, so we had to bring in some younger guys, and the younger guys have stepped up, and they've been contributing at a real high level.
No doubt about it. Brian, you want to jump in here to ask Coach Johnson a question?
Yeah, Coach. Hey, congratulations on the success so far. You guys having a great season. I'm curious about just looking at one of the statistics that recently came out from the athletic department there at JSU about the stolen bases and the stolen bases per game, which ranked first in the country, just over 3 stolen bases a game. Talk a little bit about that just, that strategy of, always being in play, always being in motion and stealing bases? Is that just your style of play? You just, want to keep guys moving, or do you actually, hey, I'm taking advantage of the speed that I have this year?
No, typically that's a part of our philosophy. We've led the nation in stolen bases about 3 years since I've been here, but we've always finished in the top 5. We recruit guys that can run, and so happened this year we got about 6 of them that are well above average runners. So it makes it tough on teams because they have to, it's always saying they have to stop those guys from advancing, but it's an old saying in baseball that speed shows up every day. They might not get ahead, might not work out, but they're going to run fast pretty much every day. And we work on the short game. So those guys really know how to play. If they're not swinging the bats as well, they'll bunt. They're fighting to get on base for the guys in the middle of our lineup to drive them in.
And is that
inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, here with Coach Johnson, Jackson State University head baseball coach. Go ahead, Brian, follow up.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, Coach, I was just going to follow up and say, with your ability to steal the bases and what your guys do on the base pads, do you have the kind of group that are experienced enough that, they kind of know the situation, or are you constantly giving them signals, or is it kind of a back and forth 50-50? We're all on the same page kind of thing.
Well, some of the older guys that have been around a little bit, they good knack. We work on reading pitches and reading slide steps and different things like that. But the younger guys, it's kind of on the job training because we didn't have an opportunity to practice during the fall. These kids wasn't on practice. They wasn't on campus during the fall. We didn't get together until January 5th. So it's still kind of we're doing a lot more teaching right now than we probably would be doing in normal situations instead of getting them prepared to play.
Certainly, Coach. Black College Nines have you ranked number 1. This is for the 3rd consecutive week. I happen to vote in the poll, so I'll tip my hat. I voted you number 1 as well, so I agree with it. With that, in terms of you getting it done, multiple time tournament champion, multiple Eastern Division champion. With that, let me go to Joe Clay. Follow up with a question from you, Coach.
Yes, Coach. Earlier we were talking about recruiting. And how the addition of the 2 new schools in the SWAC were going to possibly affect recruiting, baseball recruiting in the SWAC. Can you talk about your recruiting strategy? I see you've got guys from apparently all over the country on your roster. Can you talk a little bit about your recruiting strategy?
Well, we try to go out and get the best player we possibly can. Recruiting is tough. People underestimate recruiting. It's a lot harder what people would actually know. To recruit the 30 kids we end up having on campus, we may talk to 300 kids. It's a difficult process, and we're fortunate that I'm from Florida, so we've always got players from Florida, but our tentacles reach way far, and I've coached internationally also. So I coached for the German national team for 5 years, so we have international resources there too. So, we get them from all over. So I don't have one particular spot. We're looking for the best possible athlete we can get. That's what we side with most of the time. But we, from Georgia to California, we have kids.
During this COVID-19 season, have you seen anything different in the style of play or about kids playing? Anything that you can put your finger on that is different in terms of what you're seeing right now, Coach? Or is it really just getting it done?
Well, you particularly talking about our team, or you talking
just you playing against other teams and what you've seen as coach? You've had the experience, like you said, international coaching around. You've obviously had success, including beating the number 1 team in the tournament several years ago. So you've seen a lot of baseball at different levels. This is so different for everybody. What are you seeing? Is it really any different, or we just happen to have to make sure that we're doing the safety protocol?
The safety protocol changes, okay, how you go about your business a little bit. This morning we had to, we're testing before every game, so it adds a little more stress to getting prepared, because you're worried about, okay, we have a couple bad tests, now we can't play. So, and baseball is a rhythm game, so we got to get out there and play. We can't take 2 weeks off and expect to come out there and play at our highest level. You know, it's just
That's
work.
right. That's right.
You know, but you know, not really. You know, but believe it or not, the strikeouts have been going up for the last 3-4 years. So, you know, you kind of look at that, but that has nothing to do with the pandemic right now. I think that's just the direction baseball is going in.
Certainly, really excited about your program. Fan from afar, what you do with the program, the players there, and how you recruit and the success you have. I look forward to seeing what you do the rest of the season, including into the tournament. Anything that you want to leave with your fans that are following you, or just anything that you want to tell our listeners and viewers as well?
Well, I appreciate you guys having us on here to give us, to promote the program, and
anytime.
It's good. It's good. I wish some of the people come out. We draw a really good crowd at our games. Believe it or not, we always have. We're one of the few teams that sell season tickets to our actual games. So, I just try to invite the people to come out. It's good. It's fun to watch. We play a good brand of baseball. It's a good family environment at the park.
No doubt about it. I echo that. Very entertaining baseball on so many different levels. Well coached, well played. In terms of attention, high level, and the excitement, particularly in the conference with the conference games. You just swept Alabama State, not just in terms of the series, but in terms of what you did in Montgomery down there. And they're usually that rival in a lot of ways in terms of winning the division over the last couple of years. And so for that, the start is big. And then you have the last thing I'll talk about going in this weekend, you play your in-state rival in terms of Alcorn State. Playing on. Any last comments you talk about going into that matchup?
Well, it's Alcorn. That's all. Hey, from rat to
yeah,
they're intense when it comes to playing us. And they bring their best game when they come to play us.
No doubt about it. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said we're excited. We're excited to have an opportunity to play them. Actually, we had to move the game up to 2:00 tomorrow because of weather. So, we're going to try to do our best to get it done tomorrow.
Yep. So for you all that can't get to Jackson and get it done in terms of playing it up, you can always tune in as they have a lot of games streamed out there in that area. So check them out. Keep them up. This is one of the best programs in the SWAC over the years. Continue to get it done. Much success, Coach Johnson. Thank you for coming on. Know your time is very busy.
Appreciate you guys. I was running late. We had to put the tarp on the field.
No problem. I know you out there getting it done. So we wanted to make sure you got in. So we made it work. And we appreciate you finding a way to get in here. We'll bring you back. We'll get you on. You're going to continue to win. So we'll have a reason to bring you back on.
I appreciate it, guys.
Good luck this weekend, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. You just heard our interview with Omar Johnson, the coach of Jackson State University, the #1 ranked team in quarter the Black College Nines. Let's flip the script and get back over to some of this football talk in terms of the matchup. We were just following off on some of the talk there, but let's get into some actual games as we stick with it as we start to close up here. We got about 9 minutes left. So let's start out with the MEAC game. South Carolina State, Delaware State. South Carolina is 2-1, 2-2. If South Carolina is able to get this victory, you think they would, although it's on the road. Is 3-1 enough? They're not ranked top 25. You see two teams out of the SWAC that are actually top 25 with Alabama, A&M, and Southern, although Arkansas Pine Bluff is undefeated and beat Southern. I thought that was interesting. Can South Carolina State do anything to make enough noise to try to find a way to get into the playoffs? Let me start with you, Brian.
No, they needed to beat they beat Alabama State. Am I correct?
Right. But they lost to Alabama A&M that first game.
That's what hurt them. I don't know. I think it's too few games. I mean, it would have been nice if they could have found a way to schedule. I just don't think beating Delaware State is going to be enough of an attention getter to get them into, the playoffs.
I think you're right. Joe, you want to get in there? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that loss against Alabama A&M really hurt them. I think this year, if you're trying to get in the playoffs, you need to be represented highly in the polls, and they are not, as you mentioned. So if you're not already up there in the polls, we don't have enough games for them to make it up, to really make up some ground and make a name for themselves. So I don't see them getting in the playoffs.
But it sounds like both of y'all have South Carolina State winning that game. Any different from that?
I think they will.
Okay.
North Carolina State will win that game.
Well, the game, we just talked to Jackson State baseball coach, but Jackson State was also supposed to play Alcorn, travel down there in terms of football, but we know how that went. Alcorn State decided. Yeah, Jackson State wins. They're going to win. They're back in the winner's circle. 2-0 is already recorded, forfeited due to Alcorn State's withdrawal of COVID, or what was thought to be COVID-19 protocol, but I'm not sure that it was registered out there like that, and which is the cause for them having to forfeit all their games that they were going to play this season. Let's get into it. I just found out breaking news. We'll take this off the table as well. Texas Southern's, my understanding, at least is what a player is saying, a player tested COVID-19 protocol. So take this for what it is. It's not official, but it's my understanding that Texas Southern will have to cancel the game hosting Mississippi Valley. I was going to finally get out and go to a game. Now that's taken away from me. So maybe it was meant not for me to see these games. Any thought on that? I see you shaking a hand. You know, it is what it is. It's that time of year.
Yeah, I have no comment. I mean,
I feel you. It's tough. It is tough. You think it's tough for us, a fan. Imagine what it is for the players. So,
exactly.
Exactly. So just wanted to get in that. The other one, I'll start with this one because I'm hearing, we saw the report. Grambling is still having some struggles.
That's what
they
I thought.
test Friday at 12. It looks like they're going to try to do everything to get this game in. I think they have to have a 50-person roster that are clear by that time on Saturday. Right now, they're not there yet, but it's going to be a little scary. That's Grambling versus Southern. Obviously, we'll miss the big matchup, but Southern has an outside shot of sneaking into the playoffs. They're lobbying to be able to make up some games, whether it's to get to the championship game or beyond that. 4-1, man, that would be tough if they get this game canceled on them too. Let me go to you, Joe Clay, get your thoughts in on that.
I think it's real rich for Southern lobbying to make it to the playoffs when the Bayou Classic is the reason why SWAC are part of the reason why SWAC teams don't go to the playoffs. That's just real rich, you know. But hey,
that's a lot going on there.
You know, SSU. I grew up going to the Bayou Classic. That was the first game that I saw, the first college game I saw in person. So I love the game. I love the matchup. But I'm sorry to say this is the first year that I have very little interest in the game just from a competitive level. Southern's not fun to watch play this year, and Grambling is just a bad year for them, man. It's not looking good. Although, if you know the history of the Bayou Classic, records are thrown out of the window for the Bayou Classic. It doesn't matter who's up and who's down. Everybody shows up to play in that game, and you better not bet any money on that game that you can't afford to lose, because all bets are off, and it's anyone can win that game. So I'll tune in if it's on TV.
Yeah, no problem. Brian?
Look, first off, I'm hoping that a young man in Jackson who's looking for a home, I'm hoping he goes to this game, because there may be a coach in northern Louisiana who might be in need of a quarterback next year. Yep. It would love nothing better than to roll up into Jackson, Mississippi next year with him. So I'm just, recruiting, helping to recruit a guy. You know, that's what I've been on the phone like at noon Central. I've been on the phone like, hey, I got a spot. But anyway, Southern.
I love it.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes, yeah, that would be spot number one that I'd be looking to go to. Just saying. But I hope it happens. So I thought that was going to be your breaking news when you brought that up, because I saw the reports. I saw the reports earlier, and I said, "Oh my goodness, not the Bayou Classic." So Southern 8-point favorite. I don't know. Can you be an 8-point favorite in the Bayou Classic? When's the last time somebody beat somebody by 8 points in the Bayou? I might just on GP have to put Grambling, take the dog in that one, just on principle.
That's a cold.
Yeah, I think that's a good call to take that. You're right. It's been nip and tucks many years now, counting. No matter what the teams come in record-wise, who's playing good ball, it just seems to happen. Let's go to this one. This is the one that is a top 5 matchup. Like I said, a lot of people in my eyes are just overlooking this game. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff. Central Standard Time. That's Prairie View undefeated going to Pine Bluff undefeated. It is a 1 versus 4 matchup. Fascinating so many different ways. I'm interested in this game. Obviously, it does have championship implications in terms of the fact that Prairie View can kind of put a dent in the arm and stop the celebration in terms of if they can get it done. And the last time they played Pine Bluff, they put it on them. So you got a little bit of that. It's been a long time, so maybe that have worn off a little bit, but still, it's there. I'm going to go to Brian first and then let Joe tie it up. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, it's been, I'm just looking here. It's been a month since Arkansas, or since Prairie View played a game. Last game was March 13th against Grambling. In those 2 games, Prairie View yards per play, 4.9, almost 5 yards per play. That's the total offense. Now I know Arkansas Pine Bluff is putting up all the points, but their yards per play is like just under 4 games. So this is going to be Prairie View's defense. Which how many players did they have on that first and second team preseason? Like 9?
Yeah,
like
9.
Yeah, so
That's
this is
8 and 9. Yep.
Yeah, this is going to be Prairie View's defense versus UAPB's offense. That's where this game is going to be focused. But I'll tell you what, I think Prairie View's defense can contain. I don't know if they can stop. I think they can contain what Pine Bluff does. The question is, what does Prairie View's A&M offense look like? Because that 4.9 yards per play tells me that, okay, that's the side of the ball I'm watching. So I think the key in that game is going to be, can Prairie View, get back into, getting 5 yards per play on offense and do some damage to Arkansas Pine Bluff. And that may be where the game is won. We may come out of this, Joe, you were talking about, does Prairie View have a quarterback? They may find a quarterback, or at least they may find 2 good solid running backs coming out of that game. So I'm liking Prairie View in that game, to be honest.
Joe, jump right in there. I know you ready to break this one down. Come on, give us some insight, man. You 1870 months of coach.
Brian, you stole a little bit of my thunder.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say that it is definitely going to be Prairie View's defense against Skylar Perry. No doubt about it. That's going to be the matchup. I can tell you, and you probably already know, you mentioned the preseason all SWAC selections. It's a bunch of dogs on Prairie View's defense, and they hungry. They've been sitting on the pine just waiting to hit somebody. They've been knocking each other out at practice. I can guarantee you they're going to come out there like a bunch of savage beasts, ready to knock Skylar Perry's head off and all his receivers that choose to run through their secondary. So I'm extremely excited to see that. Also, the Prairie View's quarterback situation. Last time we saw TJ Starks is the starter. I assume he's going to be the starter again for this game. He got better that second game we saw him. Also, Conley he showed well for himself too. So I think either way, Prairie View needs to find and settle on their quarterback position. But I have faith that both of those guys have gotten better since the last time we saw them. They're going to put up points. Pine Bluff has played well, but I don't see their defense stopping what Prairie View has to offer. I don't see it. So I think Pine Bluff's going to show much better than the last time that they played Prairie View. It's going to be a much closer game, but I think Prairie View is going to pull this out, and I think their defense is going to make a name for themselves. And I guarantee you, players like Story Jackson and Dumas and Stubblefield, there are some guys on that defense who are making names for themselves. They were looking to be SWAC, all SWAC players. They're going to come out there and prove that they are still those dudes.
Wow, fascinating. Great information. You heard it here first, and at least in terms of the poll ranking, you're hearing the upset. So you see Prairie View going to Pine Bluff, getting it done over the #1 ranked Golden Lions this week in week number 7. It'll be fascinating. Keep your eyes on this one. The last one, what a lot of people would call the game of the week, Magic City Classic in Birmingham. You have Alabama State versus Alabama A&M. Alabama A&M comes in at 3-0. Previously ranked #1 early in the season, took some weeks off, not of their own doing. COVID protocols from other teams, actually had 5 weeks straight off with games called, finally got back on the field, went to Jackson and really made a statement in many different ways. If you're Coach Maynard, all on the field and off making statements. various fashions in that matchup. But then you have Alabama State, who made their own statement. The first one to get it done against Jackson State at home in Montgomery. They are friendly. Beef took place this Monday, getting on each other. So it'll be fascinating to see what goes on. But on Saturday, these teams will take it real personal. It's one of those type of rivalries with Alabama State coming in at 3-2. Fascinating to see what takes place here. Let me stay with you, Joe Clay. What's your take on this matchup between Alabama State and Alabama A&M?
This is the game everybody's been waiting for. We're talking about Akil Glass versus Ryan Nettles. These are two of the top quarterbacks in FCS, in my opinion, not just the SWAC. They can play. They can ball. Anyone who has seen them play knows they can ball. If you want a game about defense, this may not be the game for you. This is going to be an offensive matchup. So I suspect we're going to see 30 points on both sides for both teams. I'm excited. The Magic City Classic is going to be off the chain, guys. When is the last time you saw a HBCU game or a SWAC game with two quarterbacks head to head at this level? I mean, these dudes can play.
Had a great point when you talk about what's going on high level. Let me get Brian for his final comments on this matchup, and then we'll call it a show.
Hey, this game went triple overtime last year, or the last time they played it, wasn't it? And that was a classic. A controversial ending, in my opinion, but it was a classic. I'm just looking. The over/under in this game is 50 points. That is too low. I'm telling you now. Back up. Go put the rent and the mortgage check on the over. I don't. That's if you do that. If you that type of person, my rent is paid. My rent is paid this month, so I know whatever little extra scratch I got, I'm putting it on the over because 50 is way too low. As you just said, Joe, the first team to get the 30 may win this game. This is going to be a high-flying shootout. Hopefully they get some great weather because that'll help. And I'm just looking forward to seeing this one. I'm gonna ride with Alabama A&M, but I think this is going to be another fourth quarter showdown. Who gets the ball last two possessions? It's going to come down to that kind of game.
Note about it. Great points made by both of you. I'm entertained about this one as well as that Prairie View. Both of y'all got me ready to get into both of these games the way you broke it down. I want to say thank you for taking time out of your schedule, doing that backup role and getting it done and holding it down for Charles and Mike. That'll do it for us today. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. Sitting in today with none other than Brian Fulford of Brian and AD of the Sports Wrap from BCSN. Check them out, My BCSN Net, or download the app, My BCSN. Joe Clay of 1876 Sports and Culture sitting in for Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We appreciate these two guys. We hope you enjoyed our interview with Coach Omar Johnson of Jackson State University baseball program, undefeated in the Eastern Division, getting it done against their rival Alabama State, and then they're coming in to play Alcorn, the big time rivals down there. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday right here at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattaCavill. That's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. As I said, follow Brian AD in the Sports Wrap, BCSN, My BCSN. Follow Joe Clay with 1876 Sports and Culture. You say you want all this HBCU? Pull up the numbers, share with your friends. Make sure we get this information out there. We do it because we love it, but we really do it because of the fans, especially those in the lab that treat us all right. Make sure that we show up and give us all the love and give us the great comments. We appreciate you. We'll keep bringing it. With that, also check us out, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on Facebook. That's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Facebook, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. I've seen the numbers going up. We need to do more of that. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Brian.
Of course.
Joe.
Lecture.
Dismiss. Great job.